You don't notice the moment it begins, only the tremor afterward. A small no, barely audible, slips out of you like a secret you weren't meant to tell. And suddenly the room shifts, not outside, inside. Because for so long, being an empath meant being the bridge. The soft place people could land. The one who understood before words were spoken. You learned early that love came wrapped in approval, and approval came when you made yourself smaller, softer, easier to hold. Carl Jung once whispered that what we suppress does not disappear. It waits. And in you, it waited. That first no awakens something ancient. Not anger, not yet, just a quiet, unsettling question. If you are not who they need, who are you? Comes quickly, doesn't it? That tightening in your chest like you've done something wrong. You start rewriting the moment. Maybe you were too harsh. Maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you should go back, soften it, reshape yourself into something more acceptable. But here's the strange part. No one has accused you. No one has punished you. And yet, guilt blooms anyway. Because this guilt was planted long ago. It doesn't belong to the present moment. It echoes from a time when your needs disrupted someone else's comfort, and so you learn to silence them. The empath feels everything, yes, but sometimes what you feel isn't truth. It's conditioning wearing the mask of morality. And something deeper inside you begins to stir. What if this guilt is not a signal, but a chain? There's a shift that others notice before you do. You stop over-explaining. You stop anticipating. You stop rushing to fix the invisible discomfort in the room. And suddenly, people speak differently, act differently. Some become distant. Some become sharper. Some become strangers. It's unsettling, because you thought your connection was mutual. But now you see many were connecting not to you, but to what you provided. Your empathy was a mirror, cushion, a quiet emotional labor no one named. Jung spoke of the shadow, not just the darkness in you, but the unseen dynamics between people. And now, as you reclaim your energy, their shadows step forward, not to punish you, but to show you the truth you couldn't see while you were busy holding everything together. And the realization lands, heavy and clear. Not everyone misses you. Some miss what you gave them. It arrives like a storm you didn't expect yourself to carry. Not explosive, not chaotic, but deep, old, steady. You begin to remember moments, small ones, dismissed ones. Times you said yes when your body whispered no. Times you bent so far you forgot your own shape. And now that buried energy rises. This is the part most empaths fear, because anger feels dangerous. But Jung would say what you repress becomes your master. And this anger, it is not here to destroy. It is here to restore. It is the part of you that knows where you were crossed. The part that kept count when you refused to. And as it surfaces, you begin to understand. Your kindness was never meant to erase you. It was meant to include you. There's a quiet space you enter. One no one really prepares you for. It's not the loneliness of being unseen. It's the loneliness of no longer abandoning yourself to be seen. The conversations feel different now. Surface-level exchanges begin to tire you. You crave depth, but not at the cost of yourself. And so, you sit more often in your own company. First, it feels empty, then unfamiliar, then sacred. Because beneath all the noise you once absorbed, there is a voice. Yours, soft at first, careful, like it's unsure it's allowed to exist. But it grows stronger each time you choose it. And slowly you realize, this solitude is not absence. It is return. You draw the line, gently, clearly, and something ends. Maybe it's a friendship. Maybe it's a dynamic that once felt like connection. Maybe it's a version of yourself. There is grief here, real grief, because even unhealthy bonds can feel like home when you've lived in them long enough. The empath doesn't just lose people, they lose roles. The healer, the listener, the one who always understands. And without those roles, who remains? This is where transformation deepens. Jung believed individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires a kind of death. Not of the body, but of illusion. And so you sit with the ache, not rushing to fill it. Because something inside you knows, what you are losing was never meant to hold you forever. Something changes in how you feel, not less, but differently. You begin to notice emotions without drowning in them. You witness instead of absorb. You care without collapsing. This is new. For so long, empathy meant merging, becoming, carrying. But now there is space between you and what you feel. And in that space, there is clarity. You see patterns faster. You sense manipulation sooner. You recognize when something isn't yours to fix. It's not coldness, it's awareness. And it brings a kind of peace that feels almost unfamiliar. You can love deeply without losing yourself in the process. There's a subtle shift in your language. Fewer justifications. Fewer apologies for existing as you are. You say what you mean and let it stand. At first, it feels exposed, like standing without armor. Because explaining yourself was never just communication, it was protection. A way to soften your presence so others wouldn't reject it. But now, something inside you no longer seeks permission to be. And when people question you, misunderstand you, or even walk away, you don't chase. Not because you don't care, but because you finally understand. Being understood by everyone was never the goal. It doesn't arrive all at once. It builds slowly, in quiet decisions no one else sees. Choosing rest without guilt. Saying no without spiraling. Listening to your body instead of overriding it. Each moment becomes a thread. And over time, those threads weave something you may have never fully had before. Trust in yourself. Not the kind based on perfection, but the kind rooted in presence. You begin to feel it. That grounded certainty that you can navigate discomfort, disappointment, even loss without abandoning yourself. And that changes everything. Because the empath who once searched for safety in others now carries it within. You are no longer looking to be held. You are holding yourself. It happens quietly. No grand revelation. No dramatic awakening. Just a moment where you realize you feel different. Lighter, but not because life is easier. Stronger, but not because you've hardened. There is a calm within you now. A steadiness. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of comply. You exist without shrinking. And in that stillness, you meet yourself. Not the version shaped by others' needs. Not the identity built on being everything for everyone. But the real you, complex, deep, boundaried, open. And you understand something that was always waiting beneath the surface. You were never too much. You were just never meant to be less. Not distant, not closed, but whole in a way that cannot be manipulated. You still feel everything, but now nothing owns you. Energy passes through, not into. You recognize projections without carrying them. You sense intention without absorbing it. There is a quiet sovereignty in you. People notice. Some are drawn closer. Others can no longer reach you the same way. Because what they once accessed, your overgiving, your overunderstanding, is no longer available without balance. And here is the deeper truth, the one that settles into your bones. You did not lose your empathy. You refined it. You did not become cold. You became clear. And in that clarity, you become something rare. An empath who cannot be used, only met. The silence becomes your teacher. Not the empty kind, the kind that used to feel like rejection, but a silence filled with presence. You notice how quickly you once filled gaps, how instinctively you smoothed over discomfort, like a reflex you never chose. Now you let moments breathe, and in that space, something revealing happens. Others begin to show you who they are without your interference. Their impatience, their expectations, their unspoken demands. They rise to the surface when you no longer soften them. It's almost mystical, the way truth appears when you stop editing reality. And you begin to understand. Your silence is not absence. It is revelation. There is a strange discomfort in being seen differently. You notice it in their eyes, the subtle confusion, the recalibration. You are no longer predictable, no longer easy to place. Some try to pull you back into your old shape. Gentle nudges at first, then sharper attempts. little reminders of who you used to be, and part of you wavers, because being known, even incorrectly, once felt safer than being unknown. But Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to belong, and now yours is slipping, not falling apart, just no longer necessary. And as it loosens, you feel both exposed and free. Who you are becoming cannot fit into who you were. You begin to notice the body before the mind, a tightening in your stomach when something feels off, a heaviness in your chest when you're about to overextend, a quiet pull backward when something asks too much of you. These signals were always there, but you were taught to override them, to prioritize harmony over truth, to choose comfort, others' comfort, over your own inner knowing. Now you pause, you listen, and the more you listen, the clearer it becomes. Your body never lies. It never needed translation, only permission, and this permission changes everything. You stop asking, "Is this okay for them?" and start asking, "Is this honest for me?" There is grief you didn't expect, not loud, not obvious, but it lingers in quiet moments, when you realize how much of your life was shaped around being acceptable. How many decisions were made not from desire, but from fear of disconnection. You don't blame yourself, but you feel it. The years of self-abandonment, dressed up as kindness. The ways you earned love instead of receiving it. And this grief is sacred, because it marks the point where illusion dissolves. Jung believed that awareness is the beginning of transformation. And here you are, aware, awake, unable to return to unconscious patterns. Even if you wanted to, you cannot unknow yourself now. The need to fix begins to fade. You notice it in conversations. That old pull to step in, to resolve, to soothe, to carry what was never yours. And this time you don't. Not out of indifference, but out of respect. You let others sit in their emotions. You allow discomfort to exist without rushing to erase it. You trust that not every silence needs your voice. Not every problem needs your hands. This is new territory, because your value was once tied to your usefulness. But now something deeper anchors you. You are not here to rescue. You are here to relate. There comes a moment where you see clearly, painfully clearly, who cannot meet you where you are. Not because they are bad, not because you are better, but because the dynamic required your self-abandonment to function. And without it, the connection weakens. This is where many turn back. It's easier to shrink again than to face the loss. But you don't. You stand in the discomfort of outgrowing what once felt like home. And you realize, growth is not always about gaining. Sometimes it is about no longer fitting. And that misfit feeling is the shape of your evolution. Your empathy becomes quieter, not performative, not immediate. It deepens. You begin to feel others without needing to respond instantly. You hold space without losing ground. You understand, but you do not merge. There is a stillness to your presence now. People feel it. Some find it comforting. Others find it unsettling, because you are no longer reflecting them back without distortion. You are no longer dissolving into their emotional landscape. You remain you, and in that, empathy becomes something else entirely. Not absorption, but awareness. Not sacrifice, but connection. You stop negotiating your worth. This is subtle but profound. No more overgiving to prove you care. No more over-explaining to be understood. No more overextending to be chosen. You let your presence be enough. And if it isn't, you let that be information, not a wound. This shift rewrites something deep inside you, because worth is no longer something you earn through exhaustion. It becomes something you recognize quietly without performance. And that recognition brings a kind of peace that cannot be taken. You do not have to convince anyone of your value. There is power in not reacting. You feel it when someone tests your boundary, when they push, question, or try to provoke the old version of you. And you notice the space, that pause between stimulus and response. You used to fill it quickly, defending, explaining, softening. Now you let it exist. And in that pause you choose, not from fear, not from habit, but from awareness. This is where your transformation becomes visible, not in what you say, but in what you no longer feel compelled to do. And it carries a quiet authority. You are no longer governed by others' expectations. You begin to experience connection differently, slower, deeper, more intentional. You no longer rush intimacy. You no longer equate emotional intensity with closeness. You watch, you feel, you allow time to reveal truth, and something beautiful emerges. Connections that do not require you to disappear. Conversations that do not drain you. People who meet you, not your mask. It feels unfamiliar at first, because it is not built on effort. It is built on alignment. And as this becomes your new normal, you realize you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong places. There is a moment where the past tries to return. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a familiar pull, an old dynamic reappearing in a new disguise. A voice, a situation, a subtle expectation that asks you to become who you used to be. And for a second, your body remembers the urge to say yes, to smooth it over, to step back into the role that once kept everything peaceful. But something is different now. You feel the pull, and you don't follow it. You watch it almost curiously, like observing a former life. And in that quiet resistance, something anchors deeper within you. You are no longer available for the patterns that once defined you. You begin to notice how energy moves, not just emotions, but intentions, undercurrents, the subtle exchanges that used to pass through you unnoticed. A conversation that drains before it begins. A request that carries entitlement beneath politeness. A connection that feels heavy without explanation. Before, you would have adjusted yourself to accommodate it. Now, you adjust your distance. This isn't avoidance. This precision. The empath, once porous, becomes discerning. Not closed, just clear. And with that clarity comes a quiet mastery. You no longer give your energy where it cannot breathe. There is a softness that returns, but it is not the same softness you once carried. This one has edges. It knows when to open and when to remain still. It does not rush toward every wound, does not bend toward every need. Chooses, and that choice makes it sacred. Because your kindness is no longer automatic, it is intentional. No longer driven by fear, but by truth. People feel the difference even if they can't name it. This is no longer the softness that erases you. This is the softness that includes you. And that changes the entire language of how you love. You stop seeking closure from those who cannot give it. This is quiet, but liberating. No more replaying conversations in your mind, searching for the perfect explanation. No more hoping they will suddenly understand, validate, or meet you in the depth you once offered them. You see it clearly now. Some people are not meant to resolve things with you. Some chapters close without mutual understanding. And instead of chasing resolution, you choose release. Not because it's easy, but because it's freeing. Jung spoke of the inner work, the kind that does not depend on others to complete it. And here you step fully into that space. You give yourself the closure you once waited to receive. There is a quiet confidence that settles in your bones. Not loud, not performative, but steady. You trust your perceptions now. You trust your boundaries. You trust the signals within you that once felt confusing or inconvenient. And because of that trust, you move differently. You don't rush decisions. You don't override discomfort. You don't abandon yourself for the sake of belonging. There is something deeply rooted in you now, a knowing that doesn't need approval. And in that knowing, you become unshakable in a way that feels almost serene. You are no longer searching for where you fit. You are living as you are. And then, without ceremony, you arrive. Not at perfection, not at some distant, enlightened version of yourself, but here, present, whole, undivided. You still feel deeply. That never left. You still care. That never disappeared. But now, you exist within your empathy instead of being consumed by it. You no longer disappear in relationships. You no longer shapeshift to be loved. You no longer confuse self-sacrifice with connection. There is a quiet power in you, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself, the kind that doesn't bend under unspoken expectations. And when people meet you now, They meet all of you, not just the parts that serve them, not just the softness they could lean on, but the full presence of someone who has walked through their own shadow and stayed. This is what it means. When the empath stops people pleasing, they do not lose their light. They stop handing it away, and what remains is something rare, something grounded, something clear, something real, an empath who finally belongs to themselves. If something in you recognized itself in these words, let that feeling linger for a moment. And if you feel called, share what resonated most in the comments. And if you're walking this quiet path of becoming, you're welcome to stay, subscribe, and we'll keep exploring these deeper layers together. Thank you for watching.